in talking about these things, but the title of the video is extremely important, and I want to share with you why that is. When I was living in Los Angeles, I spent an entire year in Hollywood trying to get a Hollywood movie made, having no idea that it was so controlled that that would never be possible. We raised money. We actually got an A-list screenwriter, Jim Hart, who wrote the movie Contact, worked with all the best people, and we actually have several versions of that Convergence screenplay that we actually wrote for the money that we raised. When we tried to get into development, nobody wanted to develop the movie. And in fact, later on, when my colleague Danny and Brinkley was checking around with all his top Hollywood people, believe me, everybody knows who I am. And they know that I have a huge audience, but nobody wanted to do anything with me. So we struck out on television deals, movie deals, everything. Nobody would go anywhere near this. So I've had to stay independent. I'm literally unemployable by the mainstream. They will not go anywhere near me. And it's probably these shoes, Alice. Why don't we show them the shoes real quick? You got a telescoping camera there. You can... Anyway, yes, so I'll show you myself. These are the shoes that I chose to wear today. Just to be a little bit pizzazzy for you. You know, we got to have some kind of fun in all of this. Okay, so let's talk about screenwriting, right? These are the shoes that I bought thinking that, you know, I did use them once when I met, you know, Steven Tyler at his benefit. So anyway, fun shoes. People were asking me to wear another blazer again, but I said, well, you got to get the shoes. You know, the shoes are pretty freaking cool. I mean, they look like gold, you know. It means this guy's important, right? There's something happening here that's cool with Mr. Wilcock. Why would he wear those shoes? They look like tap dance shoes. You can insult me. I'm giving you red meat here, low-hanging fruit to insult your buddy. Anyway, back to the point. Here we go. So when we go back in time to those days when I was trying to get those jobs to happen, and I spent years trying to get this film made. I started it in 2005. It's the reason I moved to LA in 2006 is to do this one movie that we were raising money for, but we could never get it into development. We were blocked and blocked and blocked and blocked. Jim was showing it to all kinds of people in Hollywood. It was a great script. Nobody wanted to do anything. It was unbelievable. So to get back to the point, during this time, before we hired Jim, because we didn't hire Jim till 2009, and I've been working on it since 2005, raising money, investors, everything. I spent an entire year reading books on how to write film screenplays. An entire year where that's all I did from the time I got up to the time I went to bed. Every day I sat in the chair and I read, and I have all these margin notes. I went through about 12 or 13 different books very heavily. And I learned the underlying DNA of how to write a movie. The weirdest thing about how to write a movie is that they always come out in 3 parts, and they call it 3 acts, a 3-act structure. The second act is twice as big as the first and the third, so there's actually 4 units. If you divide the second act in half, you get 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. The 3 acts could basically be called setup, conflict, and resolution, the 3 parts of a story. You got to set up the story, you got to have a main character and a villain. The main character needs to have some quest. This is what all films are. There has to be a quest presented to the main character, which the main character, he or she, debates about and then finally decides to join. There's even guidelines about what's supposed to happen to the character, what page number it's supposed to happen on. I learned all this stuff. And then there's 2 different versions. There's the guy that wrote Save the Cat, and he's advocating shrinking the screenplay down to 110 pages, whereas everybody else recommends 120, with the idea being that 1 page is 1 minute of time on the screen, usually when you're reading a screenplay. Okay, so I'm going through all this screenwriting stuff, and ultimately what it came to was that there's always a main character. The villain is the mirror image of the main character if his or her flaws took over, and the flaws then run the character. The hero has to be set up for this quest. Then when the second act begins, that's usually page 30 in a 120-page screenplay. Okay, so you get the first 30 minutes of setup. Then the hero, as they call every person in the movie, the lead character is called the hero. The hero, which is a male or a female, then has to go into the magical world. That's the beginning of Act 2. That's the initiation beginning. Typically, the first half of Act 2 is called fun and games. It's when cool things happen and they're training and they're learning, and that's when they meet the mentor and they get the talisman a lot of times, which is an object that might be very useful for you to have. This is your talisman of the day, folks. Your, what is it called? VX6R, okay? You got to have a talisman. A lot of times that's in a movie. It'll be some kind of object that's given to them by the mentor that becomes very useful later on. We have a lot of cool talismans going on now. In our actual hero's journey story on Earth, we have laptops, we have servers, we have affidavits, we have whistleblowers, all kinds of really cool, tangible things, you know, stuff that was smuggled out, apparently. So this is very exciting. The third act is where the quest is solved. So set up conflict resolution. Resolution is the third act. Now here's the thing. Before you go into the third act, this is the most important thing I'm going to tell you about all of this, folks. Before you go into the third act, the hero must appear to have died. Does that mean that every movie has the main character appear to die and then not actually be dead because they come back to life? No. If it's like a romantic comedy, for example, this is what the books would say. If it's a romantic comedy, you don't have one of the characters actually die or appear to have died, but what will happen is that the quest will appear to have died. Now, this is a very important thing. I had said in the previous video, the Dark Night of the Soul was something Jung came up with. Many, many people wrote in and corrected me and said it was originally from St. John of the Cross. And maybe David doesn't want to promote Christianity or something. That's not true. So yeah, it's St. John of the Cross who first came up with this concept of the Dark Night of the Soul, or what is called in the books the all is lost point. This usually would happen on page 85, where page 90 is when you go into the third act. Now, this is very important. You think about Avatar. The lead character appears to have died in Avatar. You think about E.T. Elliot, the kid, has got this extraterrestrial friend. The E.T. appears to have died. His heart light goes out. His skin is all white, like he's covered in white oatmeal. And Elliot is crying. And I was crying as a kid when I saw E.T. I forget how old I was. But I never cried. And that movie made me cry because I really believed E.T. was dead. So the whole trick in screenwriting is to trick people into believing the hero is really actually dead. And then, that's page 85. You have to spend 5 pages of screen time from page 85 to 90 with the hero appearing to be actually dead, or in other cases, the quest appears to be dead. The hero himself or herself might not be physically dead. Yeah, we're getting there real soon. She's holding up Joan of Arc, Joan of Arc. You want to hurry this along a little bit? Are you getting tired? No, I'm pretty tired. Yeah, we're going to get to Joan of Arc. Believe me, this is all... You got to just admire the setup. It takes time to set these things up. But I'm trying to do it as fast as I can. And we're about to get to Joan of Arc, I promise. So page 85, the all is lost point. The hero has to appear to have lost for 5 pages. This is going on right now, folks. That's why I'm calling this the global all is lost point, the global Dark Night of the Soul. The negative has finally been shown in all of its glory and all of its terror, and this is also what happens when the hero gets defeated on page 85. That's the first time in the whole movie that you really get to see how evil the villain is, how dark and scary and satanic and horrific the evil of that villain is, okay? And remember, the villain is just the mirror image of the hero if the hero's flaws are not worked out and if they take over. 5 pages of death where you don't appear to be alive. 5 pages where it appears the quest is completely lost. Now, here's the thing. Page 90 is what initiates the third act. Page 90 is when you find out that the hero is not dead, the hero resurrects, and now in the resurrection, the hero has a renewed idea of how to defeat the villain. Something comes in, there's some insight, it happens on page 90, right around there, where the hero figures out, yes, I can get back in the fight, I can win, and I can defeat this evil. Now, when you go into the third act, the archetypes that Hollywood is basing all this stuff off of also have a very, very common plot device that is part of this software that we all have. I'm going to explain that in just a second. There's a plot device they use as you go into the third act. Now, the hero, first of all, is a person who, and they always say this, you need 6 things that need fixing. You got to set up the flaws. It's very important that the hero at the beginning of the movie have these obvious flaws. So at the beginning of a movie, it might not even involve dialogue, but you'll see things showing you that this person is not really locked into life. They're screwing up. Once you go into the third act and the hero figures out how to defeat the villain, it looks like it might not be possible to work, but there's a chance. And then, this is the all-important point. Allies that you meet at the beginning of the second act, when you enter into the magical world, you meet these allies. They return to help you. So think about what happens with Avatar. Avatar, man, James Cameron followed this thing down to the letter. The hero's journey, the archetypes, the filmic structure, what page number to do it on, what plot points have to happen on what page numbers. It is paint by numbers, Avatar. I'm sorry, it's a great movie, but it is. It's very much formulaic when you understand what these books are saying. What happens after the hero, when the defeat starts to happen, it's the blue people and all their funny, cool animals that they're riding on that suddenly show up out of nowhere to ride into battle and defeat the bad guys. So there's the cavalry that shows up. There's this huge army that shows up. And by the way, I want to point out this is also the story of Christ. The hero's journey is the story of Christ, and apparently Jesus had to go through this entire process as part of fulfilling this galactic pattern that we all have, the hero's journey. This is why you have to write movies this way, because they found out that watching these movies is like kind of going to church. You're hearing the hero's journey, you get it in a nice fast speed, you get it in one digestible 2-hour burst of the whole story from beginning to end. In the real life, it doesn't happen this way. So it could be a number of days where we're in the turmoil and the all is lost point, and the dark night of the soul could still get a lot worse than it already is now. That could happen. But when the third act begins, it's the allies from all over that you met when you went into the magical world that ride in to aid the hero. Now, in this case, I do believe the hero is the president and his allies. Who are the allies that are going to ride in to save the day? I believe that's the people, and when I say the people, I'm also talking about many, many people in all different levels of positions of power. To me, if you look at it from a strictly practical perspective, this is the most asinine thing they ever tried to do, to overthrow this country, thinking they're not going to get any pushback, thinking that the people that have grown up pledging allegiance to the flag, red, white, and blue all the way, that they're just going to stand down. And where are you going to find the staff to arrest all these people? Where are you going to find the staff to herd people off to an MK Ultra re-education camp? You're not. There's not enough people. I was told many years ago in my dreams there's not enough people to hold the guns, and there won't be. It's never going to happen. You can't create these things anymore because it requires the consent of the governed. Government requires the consent of the governed. Okay? Therefore, what we're seeing right now is something that they're trying to do, but it's like a pathetic fantasy. It will never be possible. Nobody would ever go along with it. And there's so many people from all over the world. And look at what's happening. Allies come in at the beginning of the third act to save the day. We got allies coming in from foreign countries. We got the talisman. Now we know how it was done. What was the computer that it flowed through? That it happened out of this one country starting with an I in Rome. This is huge. These are foreign countries coming in. These are allies that you make at the beginning of the second act. The allies come in. The hero has to appear to be dead for 5 pages. Again, Jesus is just one of many examples. Every film does this, but him dying on the cross and then being resurrected is the Jesus version of the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell, an investigative mythologist, said that there are many, many other examples of this from all different cultures around the world, and they all, interestingly, seem to be correlated with this concept of the change into a new reality. I've been talking about ascension for so many years. You've heard me talk about this. I've told you life on Earth is going to change so dramatically you will not believe it. There's going to be all these things that will be exposed, these dark, ugly truths that are going to come to light. You're going to learn about all this stuff. It's going to be very shocking, but it also paves the way for real freedom. Because if these people ever get defeated, which I think is going to happen, there's literally trillions of dollars of money that they stole that is going to be released back to the people, multi-billion-dollar prosperity packages designed to rebuild infrastructure, create jobs, renew our infrastructure, renew our lives, give us clean water, healthy organic food that is not going to kill you slowly, products that are made for your medical health to actually be healthy, not this pharmaceutical stuff, right? A world in which we have forbidden technology that gets released. This is very important. Gravitational repulsion, anti-gravity. It's been hidden from us, but it exists. Limitless over-unity free energy. You buy a car, you never have to go get gas because it's always going to drive. Whatever it is that you own, you never have to fill it up again. Or maybe after 100,000 miles you have to charge the battery or something. It depends on what we use. So anti-gravity, free energy, as I said before, medical technology devices. Most of the things that we're dying from, we don't need to ever suffer with. All of those things can be cured or at least greatly reduced with technology that's classified. And then we also have a garbage processing thing. Elizabeth, do you want to just remind everybody real quick about what we saw with the garbage processing and how amazing that is?
We saw a machine about the size of the back of a truck, and you can put anything in it, and water comes out, and then one other substance, like either diesel fuel or carbon.
Well, it's diesel and carbon, yeah.
You can program it, like different things come out, but pure water, and so you can put anything in it. So it's really amazing, and we've seen it. They asked us if we wanted to drink the water. We really didn't, because it came from, they put tires in, and then pure water came out, but it's around. So.
And I want to be very clear, now that we're getting close enough to this stuff, that we are taking significant steps to get all of these things out there. This is not just something we're talking about. This is something we're involved with. We've seen some of these technologies. We've seen the garbage technology. It puts out 10,000 gallons of gasoline a day and 100,000 gallons, or I think it's 1 million gallons of distilled water a day, off of 1,000 metric tons of municipal solid waste. Some of you have written in and asked me for more information on this. We do plan on building these on a large scale. I would love to see that get financed and developed. They cost $35 million a piece, which really isn't that bad when you're talking about government-style budgets. I've been trying to figure out how much it would cost us to get all of our garbage cleaned up, because think about it. If you get rid of the need for gasoline, and now you're producing whatever still you need with these machines, by the way, but now you have the over-unity energy, free energy. If we stop polluting, if we stop creating pollution within a certain set period of time, if all this money comes out and we have a new industrial boom and we can do all this stuff, then at that point, we're not creating new pollution pretty quickly. We have a strategy in mind with these same garbage processing devices to actually clean up the Pacific garbage patch. And we have a pilot program in another area that we're going to do first to demonstrate proof of concept, okay? Once we've no longer created new pollution, we can use a technology just like this, of which I'm not aware of anything else that works like this. You can go back and clean up what we already have. We can remediate landfills. Landfills will become very valuable mines. We will start mining garbage for money, for fuel. Good money and water and things that people need, okay? So the garbage becomes a valuable asset. If we can clean up after what we've done, it's not necessarily the end of the world, folks. It looks like the end of the world, and I have always felt that this is a false bottom. It's the dark night of the soul. It's on page 85. The hero has to appear to be dead. It sure as hell looks like that's what's been going on, because Congress threw everything out on January 6th. They did this weird thing that everybody can see through, letting people in, and now all this stuff is apparently about to happen, and we're going to do this meditation very soon. But now I want to bring it back to Joan of Arc, or Joan d'Arc, D''ARC in the original form. This is in the 1400s in France, and at this time there was an occupation by the British. They were suffering profoundly. They were having terrible, terrible, terrible suffering. To give you a sense of how much the French people were suffering, remember that there was an embargo on food going into their country with the intent to starve them to death. The French people were very resourceful. Instead of starving to death, they started to eat things like the mushrooms that they saw growing around that were healthy. Those are the morel mushrooms. They started to eat snails. That became escargot. They started to eat whatever wild game they had around. That became a rabbit, and there's still rabbit dishes. So France has kind of embraced this history and embraced these dishes that originally came out of total starvation and desperation. You wouldn't normally eat a rabbit. You wouldn't normally eat a snail. They had nothing else. The British were literally killing them off. They're starving to death. Joan of Arc gets these divine visions showing her that, let's go to the middle camera here. Joan of Arc gets these divine visions, supposedly, right? Showing where God supposedly appeared to her in visions and dreams, and I don't remember all the details. There's lots of different versions of the story, but the basic bottom line of the archetype is that she lost. She was defeated. She was killed. She actually died. They tried to do this uprising. They tried to fight back against the British, and it didn't work. And she was put to death. Is that the end of the story? Well, obviously, if that was the end of the story, then you wouldn't know about Joan of Arc, right? It would just be, oh, yeah, she was a martyr. You know, I think there's... No. What happened is, in the aftermath of Joan of Arc's death, the people heard about the story. They were outraged. They were horrified. And what did they do? They all wanted to believe that what Joan of Arc told them was true. They wanted to believe. So on their own, they decided that they did not want this story to end in disaster, and they used her death as a motivation to rise up against tyranny, and the entire country rose up. The entire country stood and fought, and they beat the British, and they got them out, and they restored their freedom. And that's how it happened. Now, did the beings, or whatever it was, did God, if you want to use that term, did God tell Joan of Arc something real? Well, at first it looked like no. And ultimately, I think the point is it didn't really matter, because the people were inspired. The people wanted to believe that she had gotten real information and that there was salvation coming, and that's the inspiration that led to them coming up. That's what happened at the Dark Night of the Soul. The Dark Night of the Soul in this case was her physical death. And then, as the third act begins, because remember, it's always the same pattern, as the third act begins after page 85 would be where Joan of Arc, let's go back over here now. Page 85 would be where Joan of Arc actually died, right? Dead for 5 screenwriting pages, but then in page 90, she's not back alive, but that's where you get, as I said, the allies, all these different cool magical allies that you meet in the magical world. When you enter the magical world on page 30 at the beginning of Act 2, you meet your allies. You meet your mentor. The mentor usually dies in the film, right? But he gives you the talisman, and then you use it at a critical moment to fight the bad guy. The point I want to make right now is that the allies swoop in at the beginning of Act 3, and it's all the allies coming in that actually cause the victory to occur, that cause the quest to be achieved. So what I've argued in my book Synchronicity Key and other books like it, but especially that one, is that the hero's journey is a galactic evolutionary template. Now, what in the hell did he just say? Galactic evolutionary template? Okay. I know that this stuff gets a little esoteric, and that's kind of the other part of my work, right? Besides this kind of stuff. But suffice it to say that we wouldn't be making all of our movies follow this script if there wasn't some software that is deeply installed in our subconscious mind about this hero's journey. It's why when everybody gets inspired to tell a story, that the story comes out the same. And now they've studied how much the story is the same, so you can actually tweak your story to make sure that you get the right inspiration, that you tell it properly. Because if you tell the story properly, it's a big hit and everybody wants to hear it, or theoretically. So then Hollywood says, let's just cover the spread and let's make every movie have to follow this structure. So they're all going to do this thing that makes people want to watch the movie, and most of them do. So Joan of Arc fulfills this galactic, this is what I think is going on, and what it says in esoteric sources like the Law of One that I've studied. That there's actually a galactic mind, and there's a mind in our solar system from our sun and from our planet. And these are benevolent forces. The universe is a loving, thinking, intelligent being. And you are unified with that being. You are not lost. You can never die. You will always exist. You will always be conscious, and you will always continue evolving. And you will inevitably evolve to a being who is ultimately going to be loving, kind, patient, forgiving, accepting of others, generous, all these kinds of great qualities. This is what the universe is steering us towards. The universe has an intrinsic benevolent design.